What should I do? I'm Dave, 42 years old. I'm ashamed to say that I'm unemployed. Actually, I was working until this morning, but I was suddenly fired. What do you mean by you don't have to come anymore? I questioned the new CEO. Recently, the former CEO retired, and the second-generation CEO, Mr. Smith, took over. Right after he took office, he was eager to overhaul the company structure, cost-cutting, and new ventures. He didn't listen to any explanations from the employees and pushed various things through. And finally, I was called in and told I was fired. It means exactly what it says. We don't need you here anymore. Seriously? Mr. Smith's words were cold and matter-of-fact. No matter how much I protested afterward, he didn't budge. In the end, I packed up my things and left the company. Of course, I wasn't at fault. I didn't have any ambition to aim for the CEO's position as he claimed. I was just diligently doing my job for 20 years. But all of that was lost due to his arbitrary decision. What should I do? I sighed heavily in my one-room apartment. Luckily, or maybe unluckily, I'm not married. So even if I lost my job, no one else would be affected. No one to praise me, no one to help me either. I sighed and stared at the ceiling. I couldn't muster any motivation and couldn't move a single step that day. I dragged my heavy body out of bed. The alarm clock was telling me it was time to go to work as usual. Even though I didn't need to anymore, my body reacted out of habit. The rhythm ingrained over many years doesn't disappear easily. All right, I gotta do this, I told myself as I slowly started my morning routine. I washed my face and brushed my teeth. Suddenly, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. A 42-year-old, unemployed single man. The figure in the mirror looked somewhat unreliable. My heart was full of anxiety, but I had no choice but to move forward. Where should I apply today? Sighing, I sat in front of my computer. I found some promising companies and started filling out the application forms. But my hands stopped midway. I had sent many applications so far, but there was no response. Maybe this application wasn't going to be considered either. But there's nothing I can rewrite. I rechecked the career I had built up so far. It was a resume full of years of experience and skills, but maybe that was a burden now. I reopened the job site and looked at the latest job postings. New job listings were posted every day, but most of them were looking for young talent, or they were slightly different from my skill set. What should I do? Finding a company to apply to is quite a challenge. There are plenty of job openings in the IT industry, but age and the demand for new skills create barriers. I spend a lot of time and effort applying. However, even after several days, the opportunity for an interview doesn't come. Receiving rejection notices from the companies I applied to, my heart gradually grows heavier. Maybe I need to get another certification. But at this age, I tend to be conservative. Of course, I study new technologies. But realistically, it's impossible to cover all the rapid advancements. So I end up choosing companies where I can utilize the skills I acquired in my previous job. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but is it narrowing my options? Sigh, I just don't know anymore. I'm losing confidence every day. I can't help but let out a big sigh. Still, I sit in front of my computer every day, continuing my job search. I hate opening my mailbox. Another rejection notice arrived. The tension when opening an email and the disappointment when seeing the word rejected. It had become a part of my daily life. My heart felt heavy, but I couldn't give up. I reopened the job site to look for the next company. But my motivation was gone, and I just stared at the homepage. Even the mascot of the job site was smiling and working, unlike me. As I was thinking such negative thoughts, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize was displayed on the screen. Who could it be? Hesitating for a moment, I answered the call. Hello, this is Dave. Oh, a slightly surprised voice came from the other side. After a brief pause, a cheerful female voice spoke. Hi, Dave. This is Sarah from HR at Stories. Nice to meet you. Come to think of it, I remember a company with that name among the ones I applied to in bulk. Thank you for applying to our company. Sure, thank you for considering me. We would love to have a chat with you. How's your schedule? Surprised by the sudden interview invitation, I responded desperately. Oh yes, any time is fine. I'll make time. That's great. Then, we scheduled the interview, and I expressed my gratitude before ending the call. They said they would send the details by email. After hanging up, my heart was pounding. I hadn't heard much about a company called Stories, but I wanted to make the most of this opportunity. I checked the information email that came a little later and started preparing for the interview. The suit I hadn't worn in a long time smelled of mothballs. On the day of the interview, I left home early. As the train swayed, I reviewed what I wanted to highlight during the interview. With a mix of nervousness and anticipation, I headed to the Stories office. The office was a bit away from the station, located in a small building. Apparently, it was a startup that had just recently been established. The job didn't quite match my skills, so I wondered if they were desperate for anyone. However, the office was clean, and the employees seemed energetic. Most of them were young, giving off a vibrant atmosphere. Feeling a bit bewildered, I informed the receptionist of my interview. Hello, my name is Dave. I have an interview scheduled for today. The receptionist smiled warmly and started to guide me. Welcome, Dave. Please follow me this way. As I followed the employee guiding me into the room, I noticed the young staff busy at work. Among them, a particularly striking woman caught my eye. She exuded confidence as she gave directions to the surrounding staff. As I found myself oddly intrigued by her, she gave me a small wave and smiled. I hesitantly waved back as I was shown into the interview room. All right, I can't mess this up. After taking a deep breath, I quietly knocked on the door. I heard a voice from inside saying, "Come in," and I opened the door to enter. Inside, a young female employee and a seemingly disgruntled male employee were waiting. Thank you for coming, Dave. Please have a seat. Thank you. Well then, let's begin the interview. The interview started with the female employee leading the way. So, this is the guy, huh? Ken, please be quiet, the male employee muttered, and the female employee reprimanded him. After that, the male employee didn't say a word, and the interview continued with the female employee. Dave, could you tell us about your background so far? With the female employee's polite tone, the atmosphere in the interview room tightened. Taking a breath, I began to recount my experiences. I worked at my previous company for 20 years, mainly handling system development and project management. I explained my career in detail. Not only coding, but also sales and client meetings. From requirements definition and testing to new system development and even hiring new recruits. I handled the renewal of major core systems and led in-house projects as well. As I explained, I couldn't help but feel like a jack of all trades. But my previous boss was someone who tried anything that came to mind. No matter how unreasonable the task, I gave my all to bring those ideas to life for the company's growth. Seriously, are you exaggerating? The male employee half skeptically muttered. Although the female employee reprimanded him, she also seemed doubtful. I needed to defend myself somehow. Just as I was about to speak up, Dave, we understand your experience. Anyway, you're hired, so we look forward to working with you. What? I was informed of my acceptance at an unexpected moment, leaving me puzzled when the back door opened and an incredibly beautiful woman entered. She was the one who waved at me earlier in the office. Congratulations. I look forward to working with you, sir. She approached with a smile. I recognized that smile and pondered for a moment. Wait a second. You're from back then. Do you remember? Unbelievable. Is that you, Sarah? Yes, it's me. She had become so beautiful that I didn't recognize her at first, but I knew her. Her name was Sarah. She was a student I taught when I worked part-time as a tutor. Oh, I haven't introduced myself properly. I'm Sarah, the CEO of this company. Sarah formally greeted me and then mischievously smiled. What? You're the CEO? Yes, that's right. She nodded yes proudly. I couldn't believe that Sarah from back then had become the CEO. While I was feeling sentimental, a male employee spoke up. Basically, you were hired because of the CEO's connections. It's a farce. Oh, Dave's qualifications were more than enough, don't you think? What's the problem, Ken? No way, he's definitely exaggerating. If his credentials were real, no company would let him go. Dave wouldn't lie, right? Ken and Sarah started arguing. The truth is, the second-generation CEO wanted to remove all traces of the predecessor. Is that why you left, Dave? Yes. I was involved in almost all of the predecessor's whims. I see. That must have been tough. The female interviewer seemed to understand after hearing my story. Ken frowned but didn't say anything. I'm really glad you applied, Dave. Meanwhile, Sarah's eyes sparkled. The thought of my former student potentially becoming my boss left me slightly confused. But more than that, I was amazed at how fast time had flown by. Dave, you're valuable to our company. Let's create a new future together. Despite her high expectations, I wasn't confident I could meet them. I wasn't the teacher she imagined. Thank you. However, looking into her serious eyes, I found myself naturally agreeing. Thus began my new life. After some time at the company, I gradually got used to my job. At first, I felt confused and anxious, but now I can handle things smoothly. Dave, you're quick to learn. As expected of the CEO's former teacher, please don't tease me, Jessica. Jessica, the female employee who interviewed me, likes to tease me. She's like my mentor, providing careful support. Her guidance is always spot on, and I'm constantly grateful. You need to be able to handle this kind of work on your own. I'm sorry, Ken. If you can't handle all tasks, you'll be in trouble in the future. Walking down the hallway, I saw Ken. He seemed to be advising the new employee, Emma. Ken, there you go again. Seeing the situation, Jessica sighed. The reason was obvious. Emma was apologizing constantly. She seemed scared, which was having the opposite effect of what was intended. Ken, give it a rest. She's a newbie, you know? So what? It's only natural to make mistakes or not know how to do something. That's just being soft. She's getting paid, so she's a pro. Exactly. Ken didn't drop his stubborn and sarcastic attitude, which was beyond strict. If he kept this up, Emma might quit. Ken, can we talk for a bit? What is it, Dave? Do you have more opinions? His tone clearly suggested that newcomers shouldn't speak up. Despite the sarcasm in his voice, I continued unfazed. When you work alone, there are things you can't do. Like being bad at admin work or not knowing accounting. That's why you have to learn to do them, right? No. If you can't do something, you hire someone who can. That's what a company does. If you don't learn to do everything, the one who's gonna suffer in the future is the person themselves. Sure, basic skills are important, but you can achieve bigger results by focusing on your strengths. That's too naive. This isn't school, you know? Exactly. That's why I'm saying this. What do you mean? When you score 90 in English and 10 in math, in school, you try to overcome math. Because the total score is the evaluation axis. That's obvious. It's the most efficient. But in a company, you let the person focus on making English 100 and hire someone else who scores 90 in math. That's not cost-effective. Isn't it more inefficient to keep teaching math to someone who's bad at it? Especially if they quit because of it. Strengths, huh? Sounds nice, but in reality, not everyone has talent. Ken still resisted. But Jessica defended Emma for me. Don't worry, Emma's brimming with creative talent, but her mistakes in admin work, those are within acceptable limits, so cover for her. Ken, you're good at admin work, right? Now Jessica and Ken started arguing. Thank you, Dave. Emma came over and thanked me. Don't worry about it. We joined here almost at the same time. Well, that's true. Emma smiled. It's true we're technically colleagues, but there's an age gap big enough to be parent and child. If you have any trouble, just let me know. I'll do what I can. That's reassuring. Though who knows how much I can actually do? No. It's incredibly encouraging. Despite some friction, Stories was steadily growing. We were beginning to make our presence felt in the industry and attract attention. Of course, that was wonderful, but becoming famous also brought its own set of troubles. One evening after work, I decided to head to a quiet restaurant with Sarah to unwind from the day's stress. It was a stylish place, close to the office, with a warm, wooden ambience. Soft lighting and pleasant music enveloped us, making us forget the hustle and bustle of New York City. Candles were lit on the tables, casting a warm glow on us. "This is a place I come to often. I thought you'd like it too," she said with a smile, leading me to a cozy window seat. The view of the beautifully lit cityscape had a unique charm. "Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it," I said, taking the menu as we reminisced about old times. Every dish, from appetizers to desserts, looked delicious. Sarah recommended some dishes when I couldn't decide. "The pasta here is exceptional. The chef trained in Italy, so you can enjoy authentic flavors," she said. "All right, I'll go with the pasta then. Everything looks good, but let's go with your recommendation. You're gonna love it. Also, the carpaccio appetizer is amazing. You should try it," she added. The food arrived, and we savored it slowly. After a bit of small talk about work, our conversation drifted to my days as a tutor. "Do you remember? I used to hate studying so much back then," she said, her eyes filled with nostalgia. I recalled those days too, and couldn't help but smile. "Of course, I remember. You always looked so grumpy when I came to see you." "Yeah, those days were tough. I couldn't stand having to tutoring," Sarah said, looking distant. She had indeed been a difficult student. So much so that none of the other tutors could handle her, and I was suddenly assigned to her. "But one day, you told me, if you hate studying that much, you don't have to do it," she continued. "Oh, I said that, didn't I?" "Yes, it was a surprise. But then you started chatting with me casually." Sarah leaned in, her voice animated. "That made me so happy, and before I knew it, I started looking forward to tutoring. We talked about so many things." "The head tutor was worried about it," I said with a chuckle. "I wasn't studying at all back then," she admitted. "Well, I appreciated that the head tutor let me handle things as I saw fit. During those chats, I even talked about my dreams," she said, the memory clearly precious to her. "Ah, I remember. I realized I had dreams, which surprised even me. After that, I decided to study for those dreams." "Ah, that's right. I was even super-read when you said you wanted to make your own company." "Yes, I did. I was just a kid with a childish dream of starting my own company," she said, smiling. "But her efforts after that were truly remarkable. Thanks to you, I realized my dream and was able to work towards it. I really appreciate it," she said, slightly tipsy, her cheeks flushed from the wine. "Thank you so much. I don't think I'd be where I am today without you. No, I just gave you a little push. You did all the hard work yourself. That little push meant a lot." "Really?" she insisted. We enjoyed the delicious food while reminiscing. Sarah was grateful, but honestly, I felt the same way. "You were the one who found me, Sarah. So of course, I gave it my all, Miss CO. "Oh, you're too much." My heart and pride were on the verge of breaking. Getting hired and seeing Sarah grow this much. These things kept my pride intact. I'm gonna make Stories the best company in the world. That's my dream. That's my dream now too." We looked at the cityscape illuminated by the moonlight. "Actually, we're making progress on a deal with Move Inc. Isn't that the industry leader? Impressive. Let's make sure we succeed." With hope for the future in our hearts, we quietly moved forward. We were busy day and night to secure the big deal with Move Inc. This was a huge opportunity for the company, and everyone was eagerly preparing. It was the perfect chance to significantly boost Stories' reputation and establish our position in the industry. The office was filled with a mix of tension and anticipation. Everyone, this project is crucial for our future. Let's give it our all. Under the CEO, Taylor's leadership, all departments united and exerted their maximum effort. We worked late into the night every day, and things were finally coming together. Then one day, an unexpected call came in. The caller was Mr. Smith from my previous company. As soon as I heard his voice, I had a bad feeling. "Long time no see, Dave. How have you been?" "Mr. Smith, it's been a while. What can I do for you?" "I just wanted to give you a heads up. You should probably back off from the move deal." I froze for a moment at his words. I immediately understood what he was implying. He was trying to eliminate us to secure the move deal for his own company. "What do you mean by that?" "We're also going after the move deal. I think it's too early for you guys. That's for us to decide. As professionals, we'll give our best to any project." "I see. Well, regardless of what you say, you don't stand a chance." I was just trying to be kind. With those words, he hung up. In the eerie silence, I sighed deeply. I said those things, but the situation was dire. Stories still lacked a track record. If Mr. Smith was serious about going after it, we might lose it easily. It might already be too late. He probably contacted us because he had already made his move. My heart was filled with anxiety and frustration. But giving up wasn't an option. Stories had the capability to succeed with the move deal. I immediately reported the conversation to Sarah. She listened calmly, thought for a moment, and then made a decision. "We're definitely gonna get the move deal. We can't afford to lose to them, but at this rate, it might not be a fair competition. Let's talk to Move and have them decide based on presentations from both companies." That sounds like the only option. If we create a fair competition, we can showcase our capabilities. "Dave, can I leave the negotiations with Move to you?" "Got it. I'll make sure we succeed." After that, I went to negotiate with Move. Their representative earnestly listened to our proposal and agreed to decide based on presentations from both companies. For them, it would clearly show the capabilities of both sides. There was probably no reason to refuse. After all, we had been ahead by several steps, but we were forcibly brought back to the same starting line. Honestly, it's a huge disadvantage. Everyone at Stories told me it was an opportunity to demonstrate our capabilities. But since I had caught the attention of Mr. Smith, the responsibility was heavy on me. I absolutely had to succeed in the presentation with my own strength. I had decided that in my heart. But to think it would come to this. On the day of the presentation at Move, we visited the meeting room at Move. The imposing executives of Move lined up before us. The tense atmosphere was palpable, and the employees' faces were filled with tension. For Stories, this was both an opportunity and a critical moment that could decide the company's future. Everyone had worked tirelessly, sacrificing sleep to prepare, and we had given our all to perfect the presentation. Sarah went around encouraging everyone, but her voice was trembling with nerves. I had to see the presentation through. Everyone was facing their first major stage, so I couldn't expect their usual performance. Since I was the cause of this situation, I had to overcome it. "It's okay. Our plan is perfect," I reassured myself. The project quality was good, and as long as I didn't mess up the presentation, we should be fine. I just needed to stay calm and focus. I thought that way until I saw Mr. Smith's presentation. What the? Hearing Mr. Smith's presentation, I almost collapsed. The content was nearly identical to ours. How could this happen? Why were even the detailed parts exactly the same? With that question, everything went dark before me. Was it just a coincidence? No, that didn't matter now. The difference between us and Mr. Smith was our track record. If the content was the same, it was obvious that Mr. Smith would be chosen. Everyone at Stories seemed confused, and an uneasy atmosphere filled the room. The executives at Move exchanged glances and whispered among themselves. I was overwhelmed by a sense of helplessness and just stood there, unable to do anything. At that moment, Ken, who was beside me, stood up with a smug smile. Ken, I'm going over to Mr. Smith's side. What? You guys have no future. I have no obligation to sync with you. He slowly turned his gaze toward us. No way, Ken. That's right, Dave. I gave Mr. Smith your data. We were all frozen by his words. Ken continued with a satisfied smile. In the end, I made some improvements. It turned out perfectly, didn't it? Damn it. Ken had betrayed us. He walked triumphantly to stand beside Mr. Smith. Ken, let's claim that our data was stolen. Then we can ask for a redo. That might be difficult. Why, Dave? It's true that our data was stolen. But if they point out our data management, we're done for. I understand, but I know. It's unforgivable that everyone's hard work could go to waste like this. But we didn't have a way to overturn this situation. There are serious concerns with Mr. Smith's presentation. At that moment, Emma quietly but firmly spoke up. The room fell silent for a moment. With everyone's attention on her, she continued her explanation. Mr. Smith's proposal doesn't ensure system stability. Who are you? Are you criticizing my presentation? It's not criticism. It's just that Move Inc.'s needs for large-scale users won't be met. A Move Inc. executive, looking intrigued, asked Emma a question. Can you explain those concerns in detail? Yes. In Mr. Smith's proposal, there's a lack of data redundancy, which would delay repairs when bugs occur. Indeed. That was a concern for us. Our proposal improves on this, making it possible to build a more reliable system. The executives nodded in agreement with Emma's explanation. At that moment, I saw a glimmer of hope. Emma, who still seemed like a newcomer, had moved the executives of Move Inc. But my system is perfect, Ken persisted. This time, Jessica strongly rebutted him. Ken, you took incomplete data. If you had completed it, you wouldn't stand a chance against Emma. With those words, Mr. Smith and Ken's faces changed. Well, it's true that I used some of the data as a reference, but I made perfect improvements. Yes, we have a track record and reliability. There's no issue with system stability. The atmosphere in the room grew heavier with their unseemly excuses. Mr. Smith desperately continued his futile excuses. We, with our proven track record, should take on this project. We are more reliable. It was then. Suddenly, my former colleagues stood up and spoke out against Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, enough is enough. What? We no longer have the capacity to handle large-scale projects. That's because you're slacking off. Isn't it because you fired capable people like Dave? It's not like it's my fault. In the end, you couldn't build a system and had to steal from other companies. It's over. We're quitting. Do whatever you want after this. Wait, there's a huge debt. If the company goes under, we don't care. Ugh, Mr. Smith was shaken and lost for words. The former colleagues left the meeting room, leaving only Mr. Smith and Ken behind. At this point, it was no longer about the presentation. We have determined that Story's proposal is the best fit for our needs. Congratulations. With this declaration, the executives of Move concluded the meeting. At that moment, cheers erupted in the meeting room. In whatever form, Stories had won the Move account. The room filled with voices of joy and relief. Ken, you did it. When I looked over, I saw Sarah approaching a pale-faced Ken. Sarah, I'm no longer your boss. We're gonna sue you for damages. No way. Ken, having lost everything at the last moment, fell to his knees. In the end, the company of Mr. Smith collapsed as people left. It seems he also had debts left behind and is having a hard time. The company Mr. Smith was about to join disappeared, and Ken lost his place too. He is caught up in lawsuits for things like information leaks and can't even think about getting a new job. Meanwhile, Stories underwent a significant change. Former colleagues started a new company, which became a subsidiary of Stories. By the way, I'm the CEO of that new company. I'm glad this project was a success. Sarah and I were enjoying a meal at our usual restaurant. The place was filled with a warm atmosphere. and the lights were softly glowing. As expected from you. Well, it's not about me. Emma's growth is amazing. True. But it's because you teach well. Really? But I'm worried about Emma. She might fall for you. No way. I'm just teaching her about work. You don't realize it. What you're teaching her is about life. Sarah let out a big sigh. Then she smiled mischievously. You were my first love, you know, Dave.